Thanks for tuning in to the Drive On podcast, where we talk about issues affecting veterans after they get out of the military. Before we get started, I'd like to ask a favor. If you haven't done so already, please rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. If you've already done that, thank you. These ratings help the show get discovered so it can reach a wider audience. And while you're there, click the subscribe button so that you get notified of new episodes as soon as they come out. If you don't use Apple Podcasts, you can visit driveonpodcast.com/subscribe to find other ways of subscribing, including our email list. I'm your host, Scott DeLuzio, and now let's get on with the show. Today, my guest is Maria Salazar. Maria is a 9-year Marine Corps veteran who has found the benefits of art therapy and founded Claymore Vets, which is a nonprofit that provides veterans with a way to explore their creative side. So, Maria, welcome to the show. Why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself and tell us a little bit about your military service?
Thanks so much for having me, Scott. I'm really excited to talk about this. So I served in the Marine Corps for 9 years. I deployed to Iraq in 2003. And like I mentioned earlier, I've always found art as a mode of dealing with life. It was always my, go-to. And until I found clay in 2016, it was one of my required courses for my art therapy degree. And everything just clicked for me. The medium changed the way I processed my own emotionality. And I see how it could be a medium for veterans to work with because of the physicality, like the demanding is very sensory seeking. So, yeah, that's how Claymore Vets was born.
Yeah. So, and I love the name, by the way, incorporating the clay as the medium for the art, and then the play on words with the Claymore and everything. I think that's awesome. How did you discover that you had an artistic side? I know you said that you've always been, into art in one way or another. Before we started recording, you were telling me that even, when you were in Iraq, you carried a little sketchbook around with you, and you would just, kind of draw little things here and there. But where did that originally come about with you? Is that something that came about when you're maybe a kid in your childhood or something like that? Or how did that come about?
Yeah. So, yeah, it definitely started when I was in my childhood. When we grew up in Peru, I lived in the time in like the 90s where Peru was written with terrorist organizations. And my dad was like the equivalent of the FBI here. Mm-hmm. And at that time, they were literally had like takeout, what is that called?
Like a hit or something?
Yeah, like a hit list of people that they wanted to take out from the government and stuff. And it was just really insane, right? So my dad ended up coming here and seeking political asylum. So when he left, immigration laws are so like messed up that it took us almost 3.5 years for us to be able to come, Wow. So my initial dive into art was trying to deal with that when my dad left. I think when he left, I was 10. Yeah, just about 10 years old. And so I started drawing just because I couldn't understand what was going on. Mm-hmm. And I think early on I developed that as a coping mechanism for anything for life. When I was really stressed or sad or anything, I would just dive into creating. So yeah, I think that's when it began.
Yeah, and that's interesting that at such a young age you had the the ability to come up with that coping mechanism of the drawing, and you're expressing yourself through the artistic side of you. That's pretty interesting that you had that ability to do that at such a young age. And then so what eventually turned you on to art therapy? And so you said you had your degree in art therapy. What turned you on to that? So obviously after getting out of the Marine Corps, you turned to that. But what brought you there?
Yeah, so I had kind of like a lot of detours after the Marine Corps. I became a fitness instructor. I used to teach like Zumba, kickboxing, belly dance, anything. And then I moved to New York. We had our twins, and then I became a stay-at-home mom. Like my life completely changed. And then I got the news that one of my corporals that we worked with for years, he was one of the 22, and it hit me so hard because we talked all the time. Like we would always like texting and stuff, and not once did he say that he was feeling this way or he needed help.
Right.
And like I felt like I let him down. Like how did I not see it? And so it just so happened that my twins went back to school, and I had all this free time. And I was like, what am I going to do now? So I was like, okay, you guys are going back to school. Mommy's going back to school. And that's how I decided to go back for our therapy. And then I think I grew really frustrated with veterans jumping through hills to try to get help. They tell us, oh, reach out, like talk about it. You're not alone. But when you try to go through the system, you're out alone. I mean, I remember trying to talk to a psychiatrist, and the appointment was 4 months out. And then when they get back to you, it's like, okay, 45 minutes. And then it's like the next number, but meanwhile, they send you like a shitload of pills. Oh, I said a bad word.
That's okay.
They send you like a whole bunch of pills, and here, just maneuver the pain, but let's not fix you, let's keep giving you Motrin and water,
Yeah, no, for sure. I've been there too. I've gone through that process, and it almost seemed like the first thing they wanted to try was just send you some pills to solve whatever the problem was, as opposed to digging in and really figuring out what the problem is and talking through it and stuff. Because I mean, quite frankly, I do understand it. I mean, it takes time to go through all the talk therapy and digging in and finding out what the issues are and processing everything. It could be months before you actually dig under the surface and figure out what's actually going on. And so maybe as a way of just stopping or reducing the 22 a day issue that's been going on, maybe they are prescribing some medications that are a temporary measure. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just trying to think through it logically. What could be the reason that they do that, because you're not the first person that I've talked to that has had a similar experience like that. But the art therapy itself, I think, has a lot of power behind it. Just this past weekend, I found myself actually doing a painting, and I was painting, and my kids kind of came around and they wanted to join in. So we all had our stuff. We were sitting next to each other at the kitchen counter, and we had some canvas out, and we were just painting on these things, and we were kind of just like following each other's, in each other's footsteps, and feeding off of each other and stuff. And it was fun, and it was enjoyable. And I kind of like just got lost in that moment and wasn't really thinking about all the other crap that was going on in my head. And it just helped to kind of not have to worry about anything else other than, hey, my kids are having fun, I'm having fun. Like, what else is there? Who cares?
Yeah. I love that you said that, because the philosophy of art therapy is that, it opens the door to your emotions, to your, feelings, to your thoughts. And a lot of times we have barricaded that, right? But if no one is like picking at it, like a psychiatrist would, like, well, tell me about it. How do you feel about it? It becomes so like repulsive sometimes. But the process of art making, you go at your own pace, you get into a flow mode, and then you start internalizing your feelings, your emotions. And then the fact that you said that your kids joined in and like you guys were all having a good time, that's the key that we're all missing, I think, like the reconnection, connection to our families, to like the humanity,
For sure.
And I think our therapy's role is that, to bring down that wall so that you could slowly start reconnecting, it's like little neurons just kind of like, hey, So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's one of those things that I think a lot of people have trouble with when they get back is reconnecting with, whether it's their spouse or their kids or, other family members or friends and things like that. And if they can, do those little things to help reconnect with people. I think it's a great thing. And, I've talked to several people about, art therapy and the way it's helped them. And I'm not like a professional artist or anything. What I do is not like, anything going to be hanging up in a museum anywhere, anytime soon. But it's just kind of, for me, it's just something fun to do. And, if no one ever sees it, then I don't care. It's just
Right.
something to do. And it's something that's enjoyable to me,
Yeah.
Um,
I think a lot of people have that a little bit of like, I don't want to say reservations, but that mentality that, oh, I'm not an artist, I'm not good at art,
right.
Like there's a difference between being an artist and wanting to make masterpieces and just being into the art therapy, the process of creating,
Right. And
So
again, like anything, like if you're worried about like, oh, is this going to look good or not? Like, first off, who cares? And second off, like, no one's good at, anything that they try the very first time they try to
exactly.
do it. So if you're, a little bit reserved about it and you're not sure if you actually want to try to do any of this stuff, I'm not saying you have to go out and buy all these art supplies or anything like that. Just, just doodle, draw, sketch, a pencil and paper is really all you need to draw something, um, and
Exactly.
and eventually, if you're worried about that type of stuff, like, am I good at it? Eventually you'll get better as you learn what you're doing and you go on. So, practice makes perfect. And I'm not saying anyone's going to ever get perfect, but like, just do it and give it a shot, see what happens.
I think that's the reason, well, what you said about like, people wanting to try out things or whatever. I think that's the reason why I wanted to set up Claymore Vets. It's because I wanted to give veterans a different option. There's a lot of art therapy programs that do that. They teach you, like painting watercolors, like I wouldn't say the basic, but like the more common mediums, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not very many artists have, not very many veterans have access to working with clay,
Right.
And I really do think this is a medium, like it goes great with veterans.
Yeah. And before we started recording, you were talking about, one of the things that you get to do with working with clay is you literally get to play with fire, with, how that the whole process of going from start to finish with the clay, there's fire involved. And, so it's a real physical tangible thing. You're molding it with your hands, and then you're putting it into the fire. And, the process of doing that is something that, like you said, a lot of veterans maybe just don't have access to the resources that they need to do that quite as easily as picking up a pad of paper and a pencil or, something like that, and just sketching out something. So let's talk about what it is that you do with Claymore Vets and how you're helping out veterans through your organization and what it is.
Yeah. So Claymore Vets, and I love that you picked that on the play on words, Claymore, because I was like, listen, veterans are gonna pick that up. Like, wait, Claymore, what? I get to blow up stuff? No, you get to blow up your emotions, bro. That's what it is. No, but our goal is to do more than clay, right? We give you the clay, but then we'll also give you the symbolism. We give you the safe space to creatively explore your own emotions. Clay is such a demanding medium that the first 10 minutes you start working with it, you block everything out of the world, because your senses are all in it at once. Your touch, because clay is a very sensual medium. It's wet, it's cold, it smells kind of, earthy. And it demands your physical effort, right? So in the first 10 minutes of you working with clay, you're right into flow. Right. So then everything else gets turned off. Your breathing gets slower. Your heartbeat gets lower because you're concentrating. Right. So at that moment, when you're quiet, when you're sitting in the quiet is when your thoughts start flowing in. It's happened to me so many times. It's almost like a meditative state where I'm sculpting, I'm working, and all of a sudden I'll start thinking of things, but because I'm so relaxed and so at peace, I'm able to process things, And I'm like, man,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I shouldn't have reacted this way, or things that normally in the heat of the moment, you just burst out or you whatever. At that moment, you can process things better.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for us, with Claymore Vets, we cannot do therapeutic work as far as like diagnostic, and like a treatment plan. What we want to do is give veterans a safe place to explore themselves. You know, we had just started last year. At my school with my professor, and we were full, like blazing guns, and then COVID happened, and so we lost access to the studio. My personal life kind of imploded a little bit too. I had to move back to New Jersey with my kids, going through a little bit of a separation. So I kind of put the brakes on a little bit because I had to find footing again. But now we're ready. We're ready to go back out to the world. I'm hoping to set up our own location now, so that we don't have to, rely on other studios to open the doors for us. So that's my goal for next year. Set up
Awesome.
our
Yeah.
own facility.
Yeah, and one of the other things too that you mentioned, just going back to like the form of the art form that you're talking about, the working with the clay and everything, and how that helps in terms of the therapeutic process. And again, you're not diagnosing anyone with anything or anything like that, but it's just in what we were talking about before we started recording. You were telling me how you would create something. You would create something out of clay, and then people would come up to you and talk to you about it, but you were pouring your emotions and your thoughts and feelings and stuff like that into the piece, and that allowed you to open up and talk about some of the things that you kind of kept bottled up inside. And I thought that was an interesting thing, and I wanted to bring that point up, because a lot of people have a struggle with being able to talk to other people about the things that are going on in their head. But this seems like a way that you can, start that conversation, maybe an icebreaker to get the conversation flowing. So how did that help you in your own process to be able to start talking about some of this stuff?
Yeah. So I had my first solo exhibit 2 years ago, and I had to make 12 pieces, right? And I made the theme be a biography of my life in clay. So I literally had to go back to like the beginning of my life and see how many traumatic events I've had, that I've had to be in survival mode, like for being a kid with my dad leaving, then being an immigrant to this country, not speaking English, getting thrown into the school system. When 9/11 happened, I joined the Marine Corps because 9/11 happened. Something triggered in me, and I was like, wait, we just left my country because of terrorism. Now it's here, So there were so many things that was happening to me, like Iraq, that I couldn't talk about it, I would just kind of like, okay, this happened, boom, push it down. This happened, boom, push it down. Like we have to survive, And it wasn't until I was preparing for this exhibit that I was able to pull piece by piece, like kind of like an onion, started peeling the layers. And I was like, oh my God, okay, this is why I'm feeling this, And once it was a sculpture and once it was in front of me, when people would ask me, like, for example, one of my sculptures was about an immigrant girl behind the fences, right? And I felt like I was caged because I didn't belong here, I didn't belong there, right? And I never actually put those in words until the sculpture was in front of me. And then I was able to talk about it, So It was like I was unraveling my own emotions as I was sculpting, And
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, it makes sense because I think a lot of times we might just have trouble putting our own emotions and our own thoughts into words. Like we know what we're feeling and what's going on, but putting that into words is sometimes harder to do. So when you're able to express it in a different way, not verbally necessarily, or even in a written format, if you're struggling with that, in a journal, or, writing it down, sometimes putting it into some other medium, some art form, whether it's clay or paint or a sketch or something like that, could be a good way to express yourself.
Yeah. And even if no one understands it, it's a good release for yourself,
Yeah,
because
sure.
in the process of making it, you are putting labels and categorizing, like, okay, this is how I felt, this is what happened, this is how I reacted, and this is how it molded me, and I became this type of person because of that. I mean, we are a sum of everything that's happened in life to us, and sometimes we are reactive and sometimes we are active, so we have to kind of differentiate how to navigate those things.
Yeah.
And I think the symbolism of clay for me is that you can mold yourself, you can mold whatever you want to be, and through fire you become strong, you become, like, I get so passionate about it, like, and there's so many forms in clay. There's one raku, it's called raku. It's a Japanese ancient form of firing. You literally throw the pieces into like open fire and they change, like in your eyes, kind of like a phoenix rising from the ashes type of, so there's so much symbolism that sometimes you don't even need to explain it. Just watching it, you're kind of like, damn. So
No, that's awesome. Yeah. And how that can help, start a conversation and start, getting some of those emotions out. I think it's a really good thing, especially for people who are struggling with
right.
getting those words out. And to that point, for the people who are out there who are struggling with some sort of trauma, whether it's post-traumatic stress or depression or, any other issues that they might be dealing with, what kind of advice might you have for those types of veterans who are struggling with this stuff, who maybe never considered art therapy as a form of therapy, or are on the fence? Maybe they're considering it, but they're just not so sure. Maybe they're, a little nervous about expressing themselves in a visual format or whatever. What kind of advice might you have for those types of people?
So I think the first thing I would say to them is to forgive themselves for having to be so strong that we cannot ask for help. We try to hold on so much that I can do this, I can do it, like the strength, and you have to take away your pride in order to ask for help, and that's the key component I've seen for all of us. I think we are too proud to say, I need help. Once you accept that, once you say, okay, listen, I'm drowning here, I need something else than this, it's kind of like the weight falls off your shoulders, and then you're more open to receiving that help. And just try it out, just try it out. You don't have to feel comfortable with it. Give it a few times and it'll click. It doesn't have to be painting. It could be like playing a guitar. It could be with clay. I've seen people like, welding. I honestly think that you have to try out what makes your soul click.
Right.
We're so different. Like, what's going to make me tick is not going to make you tick, but you have to find the one thing that makes you like, damn, this is like, makes you feel alive,
Right.
So
Yeah. And,
just be open to it.
One thing I found for me is that when you take something that, like, it's just a blank sheet of paper or blank canvas or blank whatever, and it's nothing really at that point. It's nothing. You're not going to like stare at a blank piece of paper and be like, wow, that's something, right? But then when you take that piece of paper or whatever it is, or that lump of clay or whatever, and you turn it into something that's it's, you've created something out of that. For in my professional life, I build websites and things like that. And when you start with nothing and you build that up, and you, when I first started, you actually had to type in all the code to create the website, and you start with nothing and a blank screen basically, and you create something at the end. It kind of feels good. It's like, wow, I created this. But I get the same feeling with art. You know, when I paint something or I sketch something or whatever, I get that same kind of feeling, like, oh, I've done something, I've accomplished something, and it's a good feeling to have. You know, I think that's another side of it too.
Oh, for sure. I feel like we're connecting. I love that you said that you have the pride, right? Because that's exactly what happens. When we take off our uniform, the pride goes away with it. And then we're out in the world trying to find a place, trying to feel valuable again, trying to feel like, the pride that, like for me, clay gave me that. It gave me back my pride. It gave me back my purpose, and I feel like it's the bridge between being a veteran and then working with any form of art, is that you become from being a destructive machine, where our mission is to destruct, to create, to building up, to making a better world, And in that sense, for example, like you said, a piece of paper, it's nothing. And then when you draw something and you're proud of it, you just created something. You created a reality,
It's like, and if it's halfway decent, you might actually want to put it in a frame and stick it on the wall or something. Like, I want to look at this thing,
Exactly. And those little battles, those little wins, you're like, man, that was good,
Right.
You start adding all these little like good feelings. Eventually it'll become your form of operating. I think for us veterans that are struggling with depression and PTSD, I don't think there's ever going to be like good days all the time.
Right.
We're going to have up and downs. It's a roller coaster, right? But you have to try to struggle well, right? Try to be very productive on your good days and not be so hard on yourself on the bad days,
For sure.
So you could savor the good wins, the little wins,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even my wife, the other day when I was painting with my kids and I was doing all that, afterwards she stopped me and she said, it seemed like you were actually happy with, what you were doing and everything. And I was like, I actually was. It was good. It was fun. And it was actually, first time in a while that I actually really felt good about, the things that I was doing, and it was enjoyable, so again, it's not for everybody, but if you're in that position and you're struggling with, like, you just can't find, any purpose or meaning, or you're not happy with anything, nothing brings you joy or whatever, give it a shot. What do you have to lose? It's
exactly.
And again, like I think you mentioned earlier, it doesn't have to be painting. It doesn't have to be clay. It doesn't have to be drawing or anything. It could be music. It could be, like you said, welding or, carpentry or, there's so many different art forms out there, give it a try. Give all these different things a try. Maybe you've never picked up a guitar before, but so teach yourself. Like, that's something to be proud of too, is like you've obviously learned things before in your life. You've gone to school, you've went through basic training, you've gone through different stuff, like you've learned stuff before. You have that capability to do that. So
that's exactly what I was gonna say, is like we've done harder things in life, I mean,
way harder.
So and scarier. I mean, dude, I'm 23 in Iraq, like we've survived all the really hard stuff till now.
Right.
Learning how to play the guitar, you could do it.
Exactly. And if
it's like, you could do it.
And if it's like, I don't want to spend the money on a guitar, not if I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it well or things like that. Well, give it a try, give it 6 months. And if it doesn't work out, sell the guitar, and like, don't worry about that type of thing. Like, it's not that big of a, investment to get into. And we're living in a, when we were growing up as kids, we didn't have stuff like YouTube or whatever to teach yourself how to do all this stuff. Like, you actually had to go to find a teacher to teach you how to play guitar. There's all sorts of tutorials and things like that for all sorts of different art forms, whether it's music or, painting or, clay and all the different art forms that are out there. There's tutorials out there for anything you could think of. So, because you don't know how to do it, that's not an excuse. Like that's a non-issue as far as I'm concerned. Like we can just wipe that one right off the books there, because that isn't
Right.
even really an issue anymore, because there's so many different ways to learn this stuff out there.
Yeah, and I mean, and right now, because of how upside down the world is and COVID, and who knows what we get back to being in people, I am building up a program where we'll be able to do it online, so that I'll be able to teach veterans how to sculpt online. And you don't
Oh,
even
cool.
need clay, because obviously you would have to have an access to a kiln, which most veterans don't. But there's other ways of making clay, that it could be air dry, it could be paper clay. There's so many other forms that you could work with, not just mud. Mud.
Right. Yeah, no, and that's another innovative way of doing things. And people are getting a little creative these days with how they're delivering their resources and their content and stuff to their target audience. And in your case, like many other people, you're turning to online, to online classes and things like that. And I think that's really good too, because a lot of people, even when it does become a little more safe to be in person, people are still going to be a little wary of it for a period of
Yeah.
time, I'd imagine. And so, turning to the online stuff, whether it's an online class or, YouTube videos or whatever it is, I think is going to be very beneficial for people who have been isolated and need to do something with all that time that they have on their hands, especially people who might have been laid off or whatever, and don't have the ability to go travel to, different classes or things like that. They probably need something for their own mental state to get them through this time. So with your organization, and obviously things are a little bit different now, being online and everything than COVID situation. What does the process look like for you in a let's just call it a normal time period, where people are coming in, maybe to a studio, and they're sitting down to take these classes from you? What does that look like? What does that process sort of look like for you?
Yeah, so we would have them come in for a 6 week workshop. So they would come, every week to the studio, so that we can introduce them to the basics of clay, to get acquainted of, basic forms like coiling, like scorching and stuff. Then it could come back the next time and fire it. Because ceramics is a little bit of a lengthy process. There's stages of when do you need to fire, then you have to come back and glaze it or paint it or whatever, and then you have to fire it again. So we had them ongoing. There were some veterans that actually they lived in a veteran's home, and they would get bussed out to us. And when they couldn't come, I would bring the clays to them. So it became kind of like a mobile unit type of thing. So it would just kind of, there's there's different aspects of how we did it. I used to go to universities and have the veteran students, have 2 workshops the same way. So, you just make it work. You adapt and overcome, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So,
and I think that's a great thing about having a veteran-run organization, is the flexibility that you've learned in the military.
yeah,
You've learned to adapt to the
you,
different situations, and you can
yep.
apply that to
Like you make it work because you got to make it work.
exactly. You apply that to everything. So that's awesome. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about in terms of either what you're doing or art therapy as in general, or anything else like that?
Well, like you said, if anyone takes anything from this conversation we've had, is not to be afraid to go out and explore. Just
Right.
all of us have suppressed our child imagination for too long, you know? And I
Mhm.
think this world needs more writers, more poets, more singers, more artists, you know? There's so much negativity that I think we owe it to ourselves to tap into our creative healing, you know? And
Mhm.
we can help each other out, you know? Because when you see someone follow their passions and be like alive with what makes them happy, it triggers something on you. It kind of like it's like a candle lighting another candle, right? It's like, oh, this one's lit up already, and then you touch this person and this person lights up, you know?
Mhm.
And I think it's just a collective healing. So don't be afraid.
Yeah, I
Everything you
like that.
desire is on the other side of fear. So
There you go. That's I think that's a great way to put it. Well, Maria, it has been a absolute pleasure speaking with you today. I love everything that you're doing with Claymore Vets and the art therapy and everything. I think that's a really great thing. Where can people go to either get in touch with you or find out more about Claymore Vets and everything that you do?
yeah, so claymorevets.org is the website for our organization.
Mhm.
And we're on Instagram as well. And me as an artist, my studio is called Of Art and Soul. And you can find me on Instagram too with that.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll have links to all of that in the show notes. So anyone who's looking to get in touch with you can find all of that information and resources there, and they can just click over to get in touch with you and hopefully find out more about what you're doing. And I know as a nonprofit, you're always looking probably for donations and things of that sort as well. I'm sure. So anyone who's out there looking for a veteran-run organization who's helping veterans, please feel free to send your money over that way because I'm
Yeah.
sure it will be put to great use.
Definitely.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the plug. I hate asking for
Yeah,
money, but yes, we do.
no, absolutely. Definitely don't be ashamed of that. Definitely ask for money. People are willing to give it. So,
Awesome.
well, thank you again, Maria.
Thank you so much, Scott. It was a
Okay.
pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Drive On Podcast. If you want to check out more episodes or learn more about the show, you can visit our website, driveonpodcast.com, or on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Drive On Podcast.